I have been in every single rank in Marvel Rivals, climbing from the depths of bronze all the way to the top, and I've learned a thing or two about what it takes at each rank to climb to the next. So today, let's cover my one tip for every rank to climb to the next, starting with bronze. In bronze, it really comes down to just playing more and learning what all of the characters do. Some players will naturally just climb out of this rank with raw mechanical skill, but I look at bronze as a great starting point to learn as much as you possibly can about the game when the stakes are pretty low. Looking back at when I first started climbing in Marvel Rivals, this is one of the biggest regrets I've had since I played just one character, Star-Lord, from bronze to the top and died to so many things in Grandmaster simply because I did not know what certain characters did. Outside of just learning what all the heroes do, the second word of advice I have for bronze players is to learn to stop staggering. Staggering is essentially when a fight is already lost, let's say a 3v6, and you still stick around trying to live and effectively prolong your death. Staggering also looks like walking in and taking fights while your teammates are still walking back from spawn. This impatience to take more fights results in you actually taking less fights as a team in the long run and is losing you games. Turn around and don't be the reason your team doesn't take a fight as 6. That brings us to silver, where you really want to start focusing on a specific cast of heroes you want to specialize in, either Vanguard, Duelist, or Strategist. After you have your main role, you should try and learn at least one from the other 2 roles of characters that don't usually get banned, especially if you plan on trying to hit Diamond and beyond. For example, if I want to main Duelist, the characters I might pick could include Star-Lord as my main, alongside Namor and Hela, with Magneto and Invisible Woman being my Vanguard and Strategist picks, since they don't really get banned all that commonly right now. This ensures that I am flexible when I need to be and can cover the bases for what a team generally needs, while giving me a clear strength that I can play to win in a lot of games. At the end of the day though, you should have a preference and stick to it even if your team isn't a balanced team with 2 of each role. It doesn't really matter what your team picks at the end of the day if you are just hard carrying, which will happen some games early on if you really dedicate yourself to a role. Now, if your team has 4 DPS with 2 tanks and no one is switching, maybe you could switch, but those situations are not as common as most people say. If you were a player with more experience in hero shooters though, your approach could look a little bit different. For me personally, I played support in Overwatch, so strategists come really easy to me, but I decided to challenge myself by learning a couple of duelists so that I could be more flexible later on in my climb. But if this is your first rodeo with a competitive hero shooter, I definitely suggest this first method over the way that I chose to do things. Once the growing pains of silver are complete, we have finally made it to gold, where things start to get a little bit more consistent, albeit not too consistent. Gold is where you can start to recognize some patterns in how people play and really learn how the game works. I say some because, well, there are still a lot of people that are just lost, and that is completely fine. You just have to play around it. In gold, you really want to focus on the ultimate economy. More specifically, you want to use your ultimates with specific intent. You should really focus on starting to understand how all the ultimates in the game are going to interact with each other and learn how you can use yours to win fights. For example, if Luna Snow is on the field, it would be good to know how to go about countering her ultimate, or even know how to play around it no matter what team has the Luna. So for example, if we are on Star-Lord, we do not want to ult when the enemy Luna Snow is using their ultimate, but we do if we are on Iron Man and could kill her through it. Understanding these interactions alone will help you win a lot more games in gold. On top of this, you can also predict how your teammates are going to use their ultimates and make sure that you control whether or not you double up, especially since you don't really need to ult to win fights most of the time. When you focus on ultimates, you will find that you will have a much easier time winning games. Better ultimate use is an easy way to focus on ranking up, since it doesn't require any mechanical skill to do it exactly, more so mental skill that supplements your button clicking. Now we have finally made it to platinum, and my tip is to understand that it is not your teammates' fault that you aren't diamond yet. You are not that guy, pal. You are just not that guy. Realistically, in the platinum rank, you are going to run into some people that are pretty good at abusing broken team-ups, so you need all the mental focus you can get. Instead of blaming teammates or smurfs, focus on identifying the main problem of the other team and solving that problem. If an enemy Moon Knight or Iron Man with Hulk is destroying your team, focus on identifying that problem and changing your playstyle in a way that will solve the problem. This could include going Star-Lord or another flanking DPS to buy time for your your team to take care of the rest of the enemies while you mark the Iron Man. This is where the concept of pressure and marking enemies comes into play and can win you games. You don't always need to kill the problem every single fight. Instead, what you need to do is give them enough to think about so that they can't just run over your whole team. As Star-Lord, you don't have to actually kill the Iron Man with the green beam. To be honest, you actually probably can't even do that. What you can do though is shoot him enough to the point where he has to play around cover and around health packs, meaning he cannot kill the rest of your team in the meantime. While you might not have as many kills on the leaderboard, it will not matter because your team is winning the game at the end of the day. On top of this, Platinum is the rank where you really need to refine your ultimate usage from Gold, as it will come in handy for Diamond. To be honest, Platinum can really be a hard rank to climb out of simply because you are going to be playing against a lot of really strong characters since you don't have bans yet. So yeah, Platinum is the ultimate test of mental fortitude, but you got this. Just stay focused and keep improving. Then Diamond will be a breeze. So onward to Diamond, we finally have hero bans, and my tip pertains to them. Starting in Diamond, it is super important to understand what the bans are in whatever meta so that you don't miss something that might hurt your characters. It's a really big deal. For example, right now the most common bans to come across are Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, Wolverine, Storm, and Luna Snow. Some of these bans are avoidable and you can hit something else instead if you really hate playing against it. Bans can also tell you something about how the enemy team wants to play the game before the match starts. For example, if the enemy bans Namor, it probably means they're going to try and run a heavy dive composition with characters like Black Panther or Spider-Man. Knowing this can tell you how you might want to play the first fight. For example, if they banned Namor and you know they are on a more divey composition, you can use your bubble on Magneto on the back line as opposed to the front line to keep them alive for longer and possibly even net yourself the first pick. Just a thought though. Understand though that hero bans really change up the game and will change every single meta. So keep up to date with the patch notes when they come around and really make sure that you use those bans properly. On top of bans, it is important starting in Diamond that you warm up before you play. Those couple of fights you win because you are warm and the enemy isn't will win you games in this rank. Diamond is a rank that is so much more common for a game to come down to 1 or 2 fights, where other ranks are much more snowbally. Usually those 1 to 2 fights are won because a DPS was able to pressure out a support ultimate with better aim, or the support's brains weren't warmed up in time and they used 2 support ultimates at once. Seriously, make sure that you are just locked in and ready to play. Hit your shots, don't use more ultimates than you need to win fights, and just get the job done. Moving on to Grandmaster, this is a rank where you typically have semi-consistent teammates, or at least I would hope so. You won't always have the best team in the bunch, but it really comes down to locking in and perfecting your characters. If you can play nearly perfectly, you should be able to win 65 to 70% of the time, even if you aren't playing meta-defining heroes. It is really difficult to play perfectly, but at this point, you probably have a pretty dang good understanding of what your characters are trying to do. It just comes down to getting the performance done. This is also where you really need to lock in and warm up before you play, because you will run into some pretty nutty players occasionally. But so long as you play your game, you should win. This tip might seem a little bit shallow, but once you get to GM, you pretty much understand what I mean. All right, now that we have made it to the apex of ranked, we have Celestial. It is time to play characters that were made to win games on this patch. This is the rank where players stick to a general meta and way of playing the game, and you really need to play the meta or develop a cracked playstyle with your characters around the meta, which is much harder to pull off than I am making it sound. Right now, the common meta in ladder is triple support, which can be really annoying to play against, especially if you are a Star-Lord player like me. So you could either play Star-Lord and try to figure out a way to make it work, or just play support or another DPS to make it work. If I do want to try and make Star-Lord work, I can't always just look for flanks. These players should be able to peel for each other if they deserve their ranks with 3 supports. Instead, my strategy can become trying to farm my ultimate as fast as possible off of the enemy tanks so that I can force as many support ultimates as possible, allowing me to give my team the advantage with more net support ultimates to win fights. I'm honestly making things much harder for myself by playing in this way, but it is technically possible. Being a meta slave is pretty boring though when the meta is bland, so I don't blame the one tricks I run into in ladder, even though you do piss me off sometimes. Anyways, we have made it to the top, including Eternity and beyond. To be honest, you probably are not watching this video at this point if you are this player, but if you are, your job is to reach top 250, top 150, top 50, then top 10, and then you can start getting scouted for some pretty damn good teams. Now is the time in Marvel Rivals to push that rank, since no big organized tournaments have really gone down yet. yet, but I'm sure they are coming, and if you are good enough to be here, this is your time to commit to the game professionally or just start making content. Get on your grind and show people what you are made of, and scrim on the side to learn more without losing all of your elo. And that wraps up my tips for every single rank in Marvel Rivals. Every player has their own challenges at every elo that are unique, but these are the tips that I have learned help the most common issues in all of the ranks. Let me know what you guys all want to learn next, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.